Hey everybody, happy Memorial Day. Hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to, before I go to bed, just do a quick live stream and share something with you guys that really changed everything for me when I started learning about how the thyroid works and how it can break down and all these different ways that it can occur. Before I get into that though, just want to say thank you to all of our servicemen and women that have sacrificed in the past and presently for our freedom today. I just want to say thank you, and that I'm very gracious for that and for the opportunity of today and their sacrifice. I think we should all keep them all in our thoughts and prayers. And before we get into this, but this changed everything for me. What I'm going to talk to you guys about today changed everything for me because, like most people, they are under the assumption and think that, like I did, that the thyroid really is just an issue of the amount of hormone that you have, right? If you have enough hormone, then it's not your thyroid. But if you followed me at all, you know that there are a lot of different reasons that your thyroid physiology breaks down. At least how many? At least how many different ways, right? Not including chemicals, okay? Not including chemicals. There are at least 24 ways that the thyroid physiology breaks down. One of those is the thyroid hormone quantity. So there are at least 23 other ways, but when you include environmental, you include industrial and agricultural chemicals that are endocrine disrupting, there's tons of different ways, right? There's so many different ways. There's a paper that I reviewed, I just read over it and looked over it probably a year and a half ago. That showed that chemicals, and they listed all the different chemicals, break down thyroid physiology at every single step. And there are a bunch of steps. Because remember, what's thyroid physiology is in 4 different phases, right? Production of hormone, transportation of hormone, sensitivity of your body to the hormone. You have to be sensitive to it. It can be in circulation, but if your cells aren't sensitive, it doesn't matter. And then detoxification and elimination. These chemicals just break down the physiology so many different ways. But without even considering the chemicals, how many? We've got 24 ways, right? And then one of those is quantity. So there are 23 other ways, and nobody knows this. Like very, very few people. The layperson understands this. You're not familiar with this at all. So what I want to show you guys was this diagram here. Now I think it's, let me see. Yeah, it's inverted. It's flipped. It's mirror imaged. Sorry about that, but it is this diagram. So this diagram, which is actually inside of the 9 Labs guidebook, that my 3rd revision, 29-page guidebook, where I go through it and teach you guys a lot of these concepts. When I started learning this stuff, it changed everything for me on how I looked at the thyroid. Because what this diagram shows, now I'm going to hold it up, though I'm going to tell you, like, it's inverted. I can tell you, I know that, but I just want this shows thyroid, the thyroid hormone, like the quantity would be produced here. So it just says thyroid. That's like the amount, and then it shows the primary hormone, which is made, is T4, and then it's converted into T3 and reverse T3. And all these things to the side are things that break it down, that stop the thyroid from producing T4. These are all things that stop T4 from being made, or that accelerate T4 conversion into reverse T3, which is like a brake pedal. It slows down all the thyroid physiology. And then on the other side, these are things that accelerate, or that are essential for the thyroid to be able to produce T4, and then for T4 to be able to convert it to T3. Now, that's the main thing you need to understand here. Is just like, listen to this, for example. This is crazy. I mean, when you think about this, because most people think, what? I have a thyroid issue and it's the quantity. I go to the doctor, they check my TSH, and that's it, right? Well, that's not it. That's not it. Your doctors they're practicing the way that they're taught, the way that they're taught in medical school. They're practicing the way that they can help you with the tools that they have. Most of them do not know this information. Because I have family members that are medical doctors, have been for 30 plus years, and they don't know this. And it's not that they're not intelligent people; they're extremely intelligent. The fact of the matter is that it's not classically taught. It's not practiced that way because there's no tools to help you with it that are something that they can do quickly. So listen to this for example. So for your thyroid to be able to produce T4, which is your primary hormone that your thyroid makes, it has to be converted to T3 so the body can use it. Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing well. Thank you, Priscilla, Jody. Hey Joanne, hope you're doing well. Let's see, Christy, hi, how are you? Hi Teresa. For example, so just listen to this for example. So for your thyroid to be able to produce T4, now I want to be really clear about something. Don't just go and start taking all this stuff. Do not do that. That is a recipe for disaster, okay? Just trust me on this. Do not do this. Do not start taking all these things. So for nutrients required for thyroid hormone production, these are just nutrients. And we're just talking about things required to be able to make it. Now there's things that can break it down and stop the physiology, but listen to this. You have to have adequate iron. You have to have adequate iodine. Do not go taking any of these things, especially iodine, which can be a trigger. You have to have it, but it can be a trigger. We think it can be a trigger based on population studies. I'm not going to get into that here. Zinc, selenium, tyrosine, riboflavin, niacin, B6, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E. Whoever looks at those things, who looks at those things to see if that's what's happening or if those are the things contributing to your thyroid problems? Very, very few. No one. Like basically no one in our traditional medicine. And guess what? Those are not tools that they can help you with. That type of testing for thyroid related issues is not covered by insurance. So that's why it's not done. So I find myself really defending medicine a lot more because people are so like angry about it, and I understand your frustration, but it's not those people's fault. It's not your provider's fault. It's not. It's your insurance company. Take it up with them. Take it up with the guidelines that they have put out. That's the issue. That's the issue. You have to call them and say, hey, I want these things covered. And they'll probably tell you, well, testing for those things is covered. With a caveat. It's not covered if it's not medically necessary. And I don't even want to get into it. I find myself really frustrated because I repeat this too much. So for your body to take that T4, now if you've got those nutrients and your body's able to make the T4, then to take the T4 and convert it into T3, which is the physiologically active hormone, you have to have adequate selenium and zinc. So that's a big issue. And then there's also enzymes, the deiodinase enzymes that have to be present. And there are things that can cause them to be disrupted. And then for your body to be able to use that T3. So now it's in circulation, right? So we're talking about these different phases. To be able to use that T3, you have to have the receptor, the cellular receptor that allows your body to use the T3 is vitamin A dependent. So you can't be, vitamin A is one of your fat-soluble vitamins. If you're deficient in vitamin D, you're probably deficient in vitamin A. So vitamin A, zinc, and then to improve the sensitivity, exercise helps through a few different mechanisms. Anti-inflammatory is one of them. And then stress reduction also, because cortisol can disrupt sensitivity. Those are just the things required for like optimal sensitivity and production. Now let's talk about things that break it, okay? Let's talk about the things that break the physiology that you've never heard about, okay? So this is, again, guys, this diagram, this is on page, this one's not, this is not numbered, but this is, I think, probably, I think this is on page, I got a table of contents somewhere. Anyway, this is in our 9 Labs guidebook. This is the new guidebook that I've put together. It took me 5 weeks to make this. This is just one piece of that guidebook where you've got the 9 lab tests where you can actually write in your lab values, and it will give you an idea of what's going on with your thyroid physiology. But let's talk about some of the things that break thyroid hormone physiology that you're not aware of. And these are the things that changed everything. Like if you're aware of this, it's kind of like one of those things you can't, once you learn something that you can't unlearn, you can't unsee it. It's like now that you know it, you can't stop, you can no longer ignore it, right? So that whole ignorance is bliss. Well, maybe not in this case, but this is something that once you learn these things, you can't unlearn them, and it will change the way that you think about your health, your hormonal health, your thyroid forever. And so these were the things that really kind of really caused me to take pause and think about how do we figure this stuff out. So okay, so these are the things that I want to talk to you now that can block, inhibit the hormonal production from the thyroid. So okay, that can stop the thyroid from producing T4. Okay, so remember, the thyroid makes the thyroid hormone, gets it in circulation, and then there's physiology after that. We'll get there. But what can block the thyroid from making the hormone? Okay, so one thing, stress can do that. This is primarily through cortisol elevation, your stress hormone cortisol elevation. Okay. Hey, thanks for the comments, guys. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Lori. I know. Michelle says, "Oh no, a new book. I have the old one." So yeah, this is updated. So this is 29 pages. There's a new video walkthrough if you get that you can have. It's also hyperlinked, so like you can jump around table of contents. Hey, Joanne, I was wondering, Joanne, if you'd had a chance to look at this. I know it's different. It's a more expanded guidebook. There's another marker or two in there. Anyway. So let's talk about the factors that inhibit or slow down or interfere with your thyroid's ability to produce the hormone, okay? So stress we talked about, and it's primarily through elevated cortisol. Infection, trauma, radiation, medications, okay? Now, a lot of these occur through inflammatory pathways, okay? So inflammation is really one of the underlying factors there that is disrupting the synthesis of your thyroid hormone by the gland. Okay, so how many people? I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent with each one of these things, but these are huge issues. Okay, so fluoride can be an issue. Fluoride can be an issue because it's an antagonist to iodine, so it can like displace the iodine, and that can be a factor. All these chemicals, so I mentioned chemicals earlier and how I thought chemicals were such a significant, they can significantly disrupt thyroid physiology. They do so many things negatively to our health. I think they're probably the biggest factor that is the biggest risk to our health today. But toxins, okay, so pesticides and heavy metals, and then autoimmune diseases. But autoimmune diseases, so for one thing, like Hashimoto's, right? Hashimoto's is the most common autoimmune disease. If you're hypothyroid, you have low thyroid hormone output. You have a 90% chance of that being caused, that low output by the gland being caused by Hashimoto's. So you're more likely to have it than not if you're hypothyroid, like 90% chance, right? 9 out of 10 chance that you have Hashimoto's causing your thyroid to have low output of hormone, mainly because the immune system's attacking the gland, destroying it, making it smaller, decreasing its capacity to produce thyroid hormone. Okay, so autoimmune disease, that's one of the mechanisms. I mean, obviously, if it's directly attacking the gland, the decreased output, but then also through inflammatory pathways. Inflammation itself, the inflammatory chemistry, can be disruptive. So those are some of the things that just stop the gland from being able to produce your primary hormone, primarily T4. The gland does produce T3 as well, which is the physiologically active hormone, but that's only about 7%. So, hey Danielle, hi Michelle. Yeah, I'll share the link with you guys in the comments in a second. Michelle, I'll get to that in a second. She said, my child was given fluoride treatments. I don't want to get too much into that. I try to. There's so much out there, so much. I think you just have to take the information that you have and make a personal decision. Like, I don't personally take any fluoride treatments at all. I don't take any fluoride treatments, and I don't believe that I really need them. It's just kind of like, it's even like these amalgam fillings and stuff that people will say that they're perfectly fine. I don't think that it's a smart idea to put that mercury into your mouth. And I'm sure there are plenty of people that will say, oh, that's whatever. There's no science that shows that. Whatever. You can take it and put it in your mouth if you want to, but you're not going to put something in my mouth that. And I've had them. I've had them before I knew. I had the amalgam fillings. I'll get back to this. Just tiny tangent here. I've had amalgam fillings, and I just don't see how you take mercury, which is in this container that's incredibly toxic, and you mix it, and then you can put it in someone's mouth, and all of a sudden it's safe, right? It's fine as long as it's in your mouth now. It's contained. It's not going to leach. But yet when they take it out of your mouth, if they remove your amalgam fillings, they're dropping. Everything okay with that? Hey Jody. Hey Michelle. Christina, it looks like my stream's dropped, guys. Sorry about that. We'll see what happens. Yeah, it looks like my stream. Let me see if I can connect. Let's see if this works. If I keep dropping, my phone's telling me that I'm getting the signal's dropping, and I see that some of the messages, like I was frozen. Let's see if it comes back. If it does, awesome. If not, we have tried our best. So I'm just seeing here if the connection is going to come back, guys. Sorry about that. It's just one of those things. I'm back. Okay, hey Christy, thank you. Back. So I see we dropped a bunch of people, which is okay. You guys, all these things are available to watch at a later date. Okay, yeah, it's just dropping for some reason. I hope it doesn't do it again. If it does, all this will be here. But I'm almost done. I just want to, before I got off on a tangent, I'm going to finish let me finish the diagram on the things that break the thyroid physiology that blew my mind. Like seriously. So we already talked about some of the things that will decrease your thyroid's ability to just produce a hormone. Hey Michelle, so good, yay, we're back. All right, so we're going to talk about the things that really surprised me that break thyroid hormone physiology, right? So remember, there's 4 different phases: production, transportation, sensitivity, detoxification. Medically, we look at one, which is only production, and it's the quantity. It is there are 24 different ways we know that physiology can break. The quantity or production is only one, so there's 23 other ways it can break down, and that doesn't include environmental chemicals, which can break it at every step. There's some good research on that. I've discussed it in the past, but I'll definitely be doing it again soon. So before our connection drop, there's another live stream. If you are just picking up, you can watch the previous one where I've talked a little bit more about this, but I'm talking about this diagram that I have in our 9 test guidebook, and I'm just going through. I talked about the things that are required for the thyroid to produce the hormone, like all these different, primarily vitamins and minerals that your body needs. And then before I was disconnected, I was talking about the factors that can inhibit or decrease the thyroid's ability to produce T4, which is your primary thyroid hormone. Now, what I'm getting ready to talk about is once you have T4 in circulation, it's not the active, it's not strongly physiologically active, it's very weak. T4 has to be made into T3. That's what your body uses. And I'm going to talk about the things that can decrease the T4 conversion. So T4 has to be converted to T3, and there are things that can break or decrease that conversion. So let's talk about those now, okay? Hey Michelle, hope you're doing well. So let's talk about this, okay? So awesome. So we're back. So factors that can block this T4 to T3 conversion, which this is all in this diagram right here. It's all in this diagram for you. And I wanted to put this into the guidebook because I think it's really important you guys can kind of reference this. And some people people ask me like, hey, what can I show my doctor? This kind of stuff. Like you can take my guidebook and pull out the important pieces and say, look, this is based on science. There's a lot of research that's going into what I'm sharing with you here. There's a ton of science here. So, I'm not going to get off on that tangent. They still might not be able to help you. So, okay, so let's talk about the factors that inhibit T4 to T3. So, stress, which was one of the things we talked about that will inhibit your thyroid's ability to make T4. Now, why is that? The T4 conversion to T3 primarily happens in the liver, and then secondarily it happens more in the GI tract, and then it happens throughout the body and peripheral tissues. But about 60% of that T4 is converted in the liver to T3. So liver, okay, is where it's occurring primarily, and in the intestinal tract. So stress. Now, how does stress do that? Okay, physical, mental, and chemical. Okay, so chemical, physical pain, and then emotional stress. How do those disrupt this physiology? Well, chemical inflammation, right? So if you have inflammation, that drives a stress response. I don't know if you know that, but it does. Your adrenal glands will make more cortisol to deal with it because cortisol has anti-inflammatory effects. So it makes sense your body's going to make natural anti-inflammatories. Well, cortisol can disrupt this conversion process. We know that, okay? Now, how does emotional stress cause conversion problems? Well, emotional stress causes T4 to T3 conversion issues because when you get emotionally stressed, what happens? You activate your fight or flight response. And when you activate fight or flight, what does your body make? Cortisol. This is all that's your involuntary nervous system. It's called your autonomic. And your sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight. We call it fight or flight. That is that branch will produce, when it's activated, cortisol. So if you're under emotional stress, you're going to be making a lot of cortisol. Guess what? If you have physical pain, you hurt, you ache, guess what happens? What does that do? It raises your heart rate and you produce more cortisol. So stress, and there's different types of stress. 3 types of stress. There's the physical pain, emotional, and then there's chemical, right? So chemical inflammation, okay? Okay, trauma. Trauma can do this. Trauma primarily all through the inflammatory mechanism I just mentioned, okay? Low-calorie diets can do it. Like inflammation, we've already talked about. Stress kind of is an umbrella term for a few of those, or it covers a few of those things. Different types of toxins. Different types of toxins do it. Lots of different toxins. If you're curious about that, just go to PubMed. If you're just curious and you want to just kind of look around, if you know anything, if you are familiar at all with searching through scientific research, just go to PubMed, PubMed.org.gov, and you can search. Just to put in hypothyroid, toxins, chemicals, and you'll find tons of papers. Okay, so infections can do it, and primarily we're really talking here more about inflammatory mechanisms, liver and kidney dysfunction. That's pretty obvious, I think, right? If most of that conversion happens in the liver, and you have a dysfunctional, your liver's not functioning well, you're probably not going to be converting T4 to T3 as optimally. Certain medications can inhibit that conversion process. The GI tract, listen, if your GI tract, I've talked about this a lot before in the past, but if your GI tract is not healthy, if you don't have adequate acidity, adequate intestinal sulfatase, if there's, those things are really major factors. The bacteria, if you have dysbiotic or imbalanced bacteria, that's not a great environment for conversion, because see, your liver will actually make T3 acetic acid and T3 sulfate. Those, when they're transported to the GI tract, the sulfatase that helps with the conversion to T3, and then that's put back into the bloodstream, and your body can use it. So these are a lot of the ways that the physiology breaks down that not many people are familiar with. So I want to share this with you because this blew my mind. Like when I thought about this and when I learned this, this is where there's a huge gap between what most people think they need to observe or they need checked when they have metabolism issues, fatigue, when they have thyroid related symptoms. They get online and start searching like, God, I have thyroid issues. I need to get my thyroid checked. And you go to your doctor and they check your TSH and they're like, no, it's not your thyroid. And that's it. And then you think that's it. That's not it. Because see, our bodies are all, every system in our body is interconnected. It's interconnected. It's not a separate system. It's all interconnected, but it's broken apart in medicine so that it can be more easily understood, and especially it takes, because you can't know everything, we have specialists and people that are really good with one system. And that's good when you're talking about disease, but when you're talking about functional breakdowns and how one system affects another, like your digestive tract, how does that affect the immune system, and then how does the immune system affect your endocrine or hormonal system, and then your nervous system, how does the inflammatory level affect your brain? You've got to understand, this is called a systems-based approach. Okay, systems-based approach, where you look and you understand. Like I'm not a specialist in anything. I'm a super generalist. That's what I am. I'm super generalist. I try to understand as much as I can about the systems of the body and how they interact. And what the really kind of cool thing is that you start finding out really quickly that there are some very key pieces of physiology that break down a whole bunch of chemistry. Okay, and things like inflammatory load, anything driving an inflammatory process, big red flag. You've got to address that, or you're going to have major problems with a ton of different physiology, not just your thyroid. So inflammatory load, you can't be anemic. You have to be able to carry oxygen through the blood and get that to the cells of the body, because every cell in the body, if you think about this, like what's the basic functional unit of our body? Well, I mean, you could look at the cell and argue that the cell would be a pretty good example. The cells of your body are a pretty good example of basic functional unit of things that, because the cells, if that when they are grouped together, they make a tissue, and when the tissues are grouped together, they make an organ, and when the organs are grouped together, they make systems, and when systems are grouped together, they make us, right? So a functional unit would be a cell. Cell's a pretty good functional unit if you're going to try to consider like what's one of the most basic building blocks we can look at, and the cell's one. And so when you do that, you say, well, what does a cell have to function normally, just to carry out basic chemistry? And you can't be inflamed. You've got to be able to have delivery of oxygen. You've got to have stable glucose, stable sugar to the cell. And some people will say, well, what about ketones? Okay, ketones, but yeah, so there are issues with those factors. So you have to have that, and you have to have thyroid hormone stimulation of every cell. So at a very basic level, you can look at those things and see if those things are being disrupted, and if those factors that are essential for cellular physiology to be carried out are being disrupted. A good thing to do would be to support those things. But then you have to like backtrack. Well, okay, why is there an inflammatory load? Why do I have a problem with anemia, or a tendency towards anemia where my red blood cells aren't carrying oxygen efficiently? What's driving that? Why don't I have stable blood sugar? Why am I insulin resistant? Why am I hypoglycemic? Like, what's driving those factors? And so sometimes those answers can be, you can support some of those things pretty easily, and other times it seems it's almost impossible. It just depends on your starting point. So some of us have a different hand that we're dealt, and we have to start with what we've got, and we've got to play that the best that we can. And sometimes it's easier, and sometimes it's a lot harder. But I wanted to share this with you all because I think this is super important to understand. There's just some basic things, like I say basic, but this is important to understand, like this physiology, understanding like what's in this diagram. What's in this diagram it helps you to have a new perspective on things. And I think that's really important. Yeah. So looking at some of your comments, here's the deal. Here's the deal, everyone. So I see, like, and I know, I defend medicine a lot, and that's because they're bound by, exactly, Michelle. So Michelle makes a great comment. Unfortunately, most doctors are bound by insurance companies. That's part of the problem, in conjunction with not understanding. So I promise you all, like I promise you, take my word for it here. Your doctors, they are, and your providers are good people that want to help you. They do. But they can't order just any test for you. They can't order it. They can't order like a lot of these tests that I'm mentioning. So we have to be our own advocates here. We can talk to them about it and see if we can't get some of them ordered. But you've got to understand that you can't go in expecting to get that and being like entitled, like, why can't I get this? I should be able to get this. You really, and I'm not trying to be hard on you, but you really shouldn't necessarily be able to get it. It's what does your insurance contract say? And then you get into all of that ridiculousness, right? Like, what does that say? And the insurance contract says that they follow. I mean, you got to read. I mean, who knows what your insurance covers until you need it, right? And then you find out really quickly what they do or don't. So it's a problem, right? And then I could go on and on and on about it. I talk about this, and I think I have videos completely dedicated to this subject of the insurance and the doctors. Listen, I've met so many doctors and nurse practitioners and physicians assistants and people that I've talked to personally on the phone, that I've worked with, that as clients of mine, and they all want to help people, and a lot of them are suffering just like you, and they don't know what we're talking about here. They're not familiar with it. So just like you, they're paying for those things like out of their pocket in a lot of cases, you know. And listen, I understand if you can't get testing. I get that. Like that's why I try to teach, and there are hundreds of videos to try to help you help yourself. Like, they don't take it the wrong way. But we've got to work together. That's why we have to be our own advocates. That's why we have to learn, and we have to do the best that we can to educate ourselves so that we can actively participate in healthcare, right? And I think that's a big factor. So it's really, really important. So let me see. Let's see. So hey, Paula, you are welcome. Hey, Anna. I know it's so crazy. The doctor's hands are really tied. Hey, Nikki. Well, so Nikki's like, yeah, if only there were a lot of other doctors out there that knew all this or would learn it. I mean, here's one of the problems with it too, is like they don't get exposed to this, because what are they doing? Well, so first of all, the demand for healthcare today is insane. Like, you go into a doctor's office, and a lot of times they don't have time to even eat lunch. They're busy doing notes afterwards. When they're eating lunch, someone's probably talking to them about the latest medication to help keep their patients from dying as quick, right? There's like a sales rep's there, and they are just trying to plug the holes of the bucket that's leaking faster than they can fill it, right? So people are dying. So they're in crisis management all the time with people. They have no time. So they have really no time to try and to educate people on how to help themselves, if they even knew. And there's no incentive when you've got more people than you can help that are in a crisis state already. Does that make sense? So they're already in a crisis state. So it's really hard to try and help that person, other than say, look, what kind of medication can I give you? I've got like 10 other people waiting that are in a crisis state right now. I got to help those people. And maybe with this medication I can give them, I can help prolong their life, improve their symptoms. So maybe they can figure out some things for themselves on how to improve their condition. But they're just trying to go through seeing more people than they can handle, stressed out of their mind, because people have all these complex issues. I mean, it's not a walk in the park, man. It is a stressful day in those types of environments. I've seen people that have lost their health significantly because of those types of stressful environments. So just seeing patients nonstop, and it's not what they thought it would be. They wanted it to be there to nurture and help people and see people's health change, and instead they get chewed up by this machine. That's what ends up happening. So crazy. I know, it's absolutely crazy. So yeah, that's crazy. So Christina says, hey, my first endo had 10,000 patients, just one doctor. Dude, I'm telling you right now, that's not an exaggeration at all. And they have no time to listen. Exactly. Michelle says they have no time to listen. Stress is absolutely killer. I mean, a lot of people that are probably on this live stream and that follow me are in the medical profession. I've worked with and talked to a lot of different doctors, and guys, they all care. They do. I defend them all the time, because I see the pain that they go through. I've said this before, but man, it's one of the reasons they have the highest suicide rates, is because of what I'm talking about, the stress I'm talking about. I know it's crazy. So let's see, what kind of questions do you guys have? Did y'all know all this stuff? A lot of people don't. I'm gonna try to scroll up. Hopefully I don't drop my connection, but I might. So it looks like it came back here. Menopause is magnified with Hashimoto's. Yeah. So Jody says menopause is magnified with Hashimoto's for sure, because with Hashimoto's, there's a roller coaster up and down of thyroid hormone production, because the autoimmune process waxes and wanes. So when the immune system attacks the thyroid and starts destroying the thyroid, you'll typically get a decreased output of production initially, and then as the cells are destroyed, you get the cells of the thyroid are destroyed, think of them as like a water balloon full of like thyroid hormone, and as they're destroyed and they open, they dump their contents into the bloodstream, spiking thyroid hormone, and then you get symptoms maybe even of hyperthyroidism, and then you burn through it and it starts to come down, and then you start feeling hypo again. So it's just this constant roller coaster up and down. And when you're in menopause, or you're going through menopause, your adrenal glands have to start taking over and doing some of the work as the ovaries start to decrease their output of your hormones. So the adrenals can take over some of that, but not like the ovaries do, but they take over some of the production of your hormones. So if you're hypothyroid, what did I say? Every cell in the body has to have thyroid hormone to function normally. That includes your glands. So listen, any endocrine problem, rule out thyroid. Any endocrine problem, rule out thyroid, right? Because those glands and the hormones they produce are dependent upon the thyroid physiology, dependent upon the thyroid to stimulate their cellular physiology so that they produce their hormones, okay? Does that make sense? So it can make anything worse, like really, and so Hashimoto's definitely can make menopause worse. And there's usually several layers of things that are contributing to making menopause worse. It's just pretty crazy. Danielle says, "Hey, will your guidebook help people that have had a thyroidectomy?" Yes, yeah. So it's interesting thing here. Interesting thing is that, like my guidebook, the 9 tests, which I'll put it in the comments if anyone's interested in it. You check it out. It's $7, 9thyroidtests.com. I think that's it. If it doesn't work, you just have to let me know. That guidebook is actually about understanding thyroid physiology. It's not just about autoimmunity. So that's why it's called the 9 tests required to understand your thyroid. So it helps. Yeah, Renee, hold on, I'll answer that in a second too. That it does help. The guidebook helps you to understand what's happening with your thyroid physiology as a whole. So it helps you to look at a lot of the different stages of production and conversion, and helps you to better understand the factors that are involved. So, it does. And so I have there's an entire section. Like, it would probably be good if I had the table of contents here, but I've got this thing I've got it just loosely. It's not bound here. But yeah, I have a whole section on it because that's a common question. So people started asking that question. I was like, you know what? The next guidebook revision I do, I'm going to create a whole section on what if you don't have a thyroid. That's actually the third thing that I cover in the table of contents. What if you don't have a thyroid? And so I talk about that, and I can tell you, I can give you an idea of what you do. If you don't have a thyroid, what you have to. You're always going to be, I'll say this, though interestingly enough, I have had a case or two where people have had a thyroidectomy and they go back and they've imaged it and they have thyroid tissue. Now, it's really interesting, is that tissue, so the thought is that the tissue is going through mitosis, right, cellular division, and then it's growing back. It's pretty mind-blowing because when you learn that, and when you have your thyroid removed, they say it's not going to come back. But I've had 2 people, one person confirmed ultrasound, everything, it's back. And it blows that I was like, are you sure they removed it? But they did, and they had tissue that was there. So when you have your thyroid removed, the main thing is that your thyroid hormone has to be replaced for the rest of your life via a replacement hormone, right? So you have to really look at those replacement hormones to get the quantity to the right level. Now, that's really not much different than a lot of people that have hypothyroidism and that have to take a medication as well. Except that they're using the thyroid hormone replacement with what their body's making. So in either case, your doctor was going to look at that, and they're going to help you try to balance those levels, get those levels so that your TSH is normal and your T4 is normal. Typically, I mean, sometimes they'll look at more hormones than just TSH, but really you need to look at your T4 and your T3. And people ask me, like I have in here, like another question that I answer in this guidebook is, so let's see, which one is it? What is the best thyroid hormone replacement? Because people ask me that all the time. They're like, hey, what's the best replacement? Well, I've seen people on every one of them, I think, like every medication's out there. And it's really not a question of what's the best replacement. It's like, what does your body do? Like, does your body convert T4 to T3 well? Are you converting well? If you are, then I've seen, when I've observed patients that do convert their T4 to T3 well, they're typically doing really well on like one of the synthetic T4s like Synthroid or levothyroxine. They do great with that. A lot of people do great with those. But then there's some people that don't convert well, like T4 to T3, and then they try all the things that we mentioned earlier in the guidebook. They've tried to, take the nutrients and work on the factors that improve conversion. They're just not converting well. So I'm like, it must be, maybe it's something either that we're not observing, like some kind of chemicals or issues there's a ton of different possibilities, or something genetic that they're not converting well. But those people might do better, for example, on like a desiccated thyroid hormone, or like taking a T4 and T3, like their doctor may be adding in Cytomel. But most doctors will not prescribe those because T3 is really easy to overdose someone, and they don't want someone to have some negative consequences or heart attack due to taking T3, because that's not typically what they're taught, to prescribe or how to prescribe, and they're worried that you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke or something is going to happen because it'd be easier to overdose them. So I talk about a lot of those issues in the guidebook because those are things that come up, and so anyway, that's what I tried to do with this. Is I was like, how many of these common questions, can I answer for people that they have? So let's see. Michelle says, "Hey, I was told that since I have Hashimoto's, that working out will hurt my symptoms more, and I should not do a hard workout." Michelle, that really depends. It really depends on. Some people will exercise. Like here's the rule of thumb with exercise. If you have Hashimoto's, you need to focus on. It's an autoimmune process, first of all, right? That is what the problem is. Like you have an autoimmune condition where your immune system's attacking the thyroid. In that case, you have to do as many things as possible to support optimal immune function, okay? To support optimal immune function. So what you've got to do is you really want to try to address factors that could drive an immune response, like remove those from your diet. If you have different types of infections that are stimulating an immune response, try to address those, get rid of any kind of chronic infection. If you have chemical reactivity, if you're reacting to chemicals, then you try to assess potential sources and get those out of your environment. And then at the right time, you can work on trying to support more specifically detoxification pathways of the body, but you don't do that initially. And then the other hand, you have to support immune system regulatory function. That's one of the things that you really want to do. Make sure vitamin D levels are optimal, and in similar cases, that's what you might do there. You support vitamin D, support antioxidants, support essential fatty acid status. There are some things that help with immune regulatory function that we commonly see that tend to help. And then when you've done some of those foundational things, then exercise tends to be a lot easier, because a lot of times when I'm working with someone that has an autoimmune condition, I tell them if they're not already exercising, I don't have them exercise, because that will oftentimes create a stress response that they cannot recover from, and it's very difficult. So here's a good rule of thumb for you. If you exercise and at the end of your exercise you feel wiped out and like your day is done, you've overdone it. Okay, you've overdone it. You should feel, when you exercise and you finish, you should feel like, this is especially important rule of thumb for someone that has Hashimoto's or autoimmunity. Really, anyone, really, if you feel like you're wiped out and your day is done, you've overtrained, and that's you've created a negative stress response. Unless you're like a professional athlete, that's too much. Okay, you should actually feel like your brain's turned on and like your blood's flowing and like you really want to do more. That's really what you should feel like. You really want to exercise more. So you've got to stop before you hit that, before you completely exhaust yourself. And so a lot of times I don't even have people start with exercise if they're not exercising. It's too strenuous. Like if they can do something like gentle walking or stretching or something that is more focused on breathing and just gentle movements, I'm all for it. Because that helps to reduce stress. It helps to take them more into a parasympathetic state where they're rest and digest versus fight or flight. Those are all very helpful. Breathing techniques can be wonderful if they're going to spend some time trying to focus on some kind of mind-body practice. Really, it's hard to beat breathing techniques. It can be really, really helpful. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, you got to be careful with exercise initially. That's why, everyone. You really have to treat everyone. I mean, there's there's a lot of general recommendations that you can make, but you still want to treat everyone, tailor things to them as much as possible, because there are differences. There are definitely differences. Zoe says, what is the optimal vitamin D level? Zoe, so the lab ranges that I commonly see in practice are 30 to 100. So what I try to do is get people into the top 25% of the reference range. So I shoot for about blood serum levels of about 70. And it can be higher, sometimes it's 70, 80, 90. The concerns with toxicity of vitamin D, man, I have heard this discussed many, many times, and it's typically really high that you have to get those levels significantly higher. It can cause hypercalcemia. I'm a lot less concerned with people. If you're taking vitamin D, you need to get it rechecked. But people are much more likely. I mean, people do it. People overdose on like anti-inflammatories, over-the-counter stuff every single day, and die from those things. Die from them. It's very rare people are not overdosing from vitamin D. It's really a hard thing to do. You do want to be reasonable with everything, right? You want to be reasonable with everything, but I shoot for that top 3/4, or I should say the top 25% of the reference range, because that's where we're going to get vitamin D. Is so important for so many different physiological processes, but it's really important for immune system regulatory function. Really important. So that's critical when we're talking about autoimmunity, right? Because our immune system is not well regulated. It's attacking our bodies. It's not, it's definitely, it's a factor that I've observed can be very helpful when you get vitamin D into more optimal range. So let's see here, guys. You are welcome, guys. Yeah, you can check out the guidebook if you're interested. You can get the guidebooks like $7. If you want to get like a video walkthrough, you can pay just a little bit more to get a video walkthrough. There's a few things that you can do if you do purchase the guidebook. We'll give you an option to get some other resources if you want, but you can just get the regular guidebook for $7 if you want to. That just helps us to cover. There's a bunch of videos that are hyperlinked throughout the guidebook, and they're hosted on a site that we pay for. And then there's to access our guidebook, it's inside of a members area, so you'll get a username and password, and so we pay for that. So that just helps us to cover some of those costs. Yeah, Christina says it's dangerous to take T3. It can be. I mean, it can be dangerous to take T3, and if doctors aren't really familiar with how to prescribe it, if they haven't been really, trained in that, it can be unnerving. I want to tell you something. Like one of the tips that I'm pretty sure I put it in here. I'm pretty sure I put this in this guidebook. I'm wondering. I thought I did. There's so much that I covered in here. I know I did, and I think in the video. But anyway, one of the things that's kind of interesting is if you're trying to find someone that can help you with like maybe T3 medications, you can always call your pharmacy up and say, hey, I live here in this area, and I'm wondering if if there's a doctor that prescribes like natural, desiccated thyroid hormones in the area, or T3 medications or anything like that, and they can help you. They can actually say, yeah, hey, such and such does. And then you can try to get an appointment there. You can research them and try to get an appointment there for your medication. Now, they might not be able to help you at all with the physiology and all the things that I'm talking about, because that's the systems-based approach is not using T3. So I'll just say this. I've seen a lot of medical clinics advertising like holistic approaches to the thyroid, and thyroid, like they're really promoting the thyroid and advertising a lot. And then I've seen clients that have gone to these places, right? And the only thing that they do, the only thing, and it's cool. I mean, it's better than nothing. But the only thing they do different than their regular than your general practitioner for the thyroid. The only thing that a lot of these clinics do different is they advertise like this all natural approach to the thyroid and stuff. And the only thing they do different is prescribe like desiccated hormone. So they'll give you like a natural desiccated thyroid hormone, which has like T4 and T3 in it, right? So it's basically giving you some T3. And I'm just like, wow, there's a lot more that they could do. But you know what? That's awesome because that helps a bunch of people. And you know what? If it helps you symptomatically, I'm glad. But there's a lot more that has to be done to address production of the hormone, transportation, sensitivity of your body to the hormone, and detoxification. A lot of people don't get better. I mean, if you improve taking a hormone, it doesn't mean that you fix the physiology. That's just, there are almost always layers to this. And if you're just ignoring the autoimmunity, if you haven't been checked for autoimmunity and you're ignoring it, do not do that, because autoimmunity can expand to other tissues. And it doesn't just sit still. That's not something that just it sits still. You really need to work on factors that are promoting the immune response and getting better immune regulatory function. So just keep that in mind. But those are some good things, that like tips that you can take and things you can do to try to find someone that might be able to help you out with that might be more flexible. Or I've worked with because I work with people around the country, across the U.S., and I work with people in other countries, and it's awesome when they have a healthcare provider that is open to like saying, yeah, okay, a systems-based approach makes sense, right? Like looking at these multiple systems of the body, working with their provider if they think and if they're willing to agree that like, hey, yeah, dietary changes, lifestyle changes, temporary nutritional supplementation, that all makes sense. If they're willing to do that, we can really usually work together very, very well. And I can, and because what my opinion and what I think is the future is a complementary team, a healthcare team, not like me alone, or your doctor alone. We listen. This is exactly why there are. I think that one of the big trends that I think is going to make a big difference, and it's going to have to occur, is we're going to have partners with our doctors, and that can help you as a patient. Like health coaches are I think that are really familiar with these approaches are fantastic resources. Some of the people that I have worked with that are my clients. And that I've worked with, more intensively, they have decided to go in and do this kind of stuff, and I think it's pretty awesome. I know Joanne was on here; she's decided to do that, and she is super compassionate, great person. You should check her out too. I think she started a Facebook page too that you can take a look at, and she's wonderful. So those types of partnerships are what we're going to have to, I think, really help people make change. It's one of the reasons, so. You think about how big this issue is, and like how the doctors don't have enough resources. How do we leverage this information? So I'll produce a bunch of videos, but then I've put together some different types of programs, which I'm currently recording, updating based on new information and new science. So they're not even available right now, but I'm going to be providing those to you guys if you want to get access to those, so you can just walk through the process of like what I would do with someone clinically, like dietarily, lifestyle, general recommendations that can be really, really helpful. We've got to be able to do stuff like that to help people in mass and leverage time, because the doctors alone aren't the answer. They're just not. It's not going to work that way. There aren't enough. If every doctor, listen to me when I say this, please. If every doctor and healthcare provider in the United States, did nothing but what I'm telling you right now, what I'm telling and communicating with everyone that's seen this live stream and watching this, if that's all the doctors did was work on thyroid and systems-based approach, we would not have enough providers to address the overwhelming need and demand for this problem. That's how big the issue is. That's how big the problem is. You guys watching this is a massive, massive issue. So many people are struggling with these issues that millions of people that don't even know they have thyroid autoimmunity. They're undiagnosed with hypothyroidism, and then we have to leverage our time some other way. It's just gonna have to be that way. So let me see what else. I'm gonna get off here in just a second. I bet it's late. Yes, it's 10:30. Oh, epic 10 minutes turns into an hour and a half. Okay. Hey Helen, I hope you're doing well. Anna, Michelle, sonogram was better than the one before. How's that possible? I have Hashimoto's. I feel worse every day, but my doctor said my last thyroid sonogram was better than the one before. Excuse me. Michelle says, I have Hashimoto's and I feel worse every day, but my doctor said that my last thyroid sonogram was better than the one before. How's that possible? Well, I'll tell you, I'm not sure exactly what they said was better, but like I mentioned earlier, that I have had people that have had a thyroidectomy and they have thyroid tissue grow back. These are people that knew this before I ever started working with them. I mean, this was not like we did it or something. I've never been responsible for a thyroid growing back that I've ever known about. But I will tell you this: the thyroid tissue does go through mitosis, like cellular division. So its ability to grow and heal is. I mean, there's a possibility there. So maybe it's improving to some degree. And I understand you feel worse every day. Yeah, unfortunately, I wish they correlated, right? Like getting the thyroid looking better means you feel better, but unfortunately, it doesn't. So there's other mechanisms and stuff at play. A bunch of different things could be going on. Let's see. So, how about this? Guys, how about you just post your questions for me, and I will have my staff and I will look at them tomorrow. I'm so sorry if I can't get to them. I know you guys are posting a ton of questions. I see we've got questions from a lot of different places. So really do appreciate you. Yeah, it's Misty. Misty, you know me. It's way past bedtime. So let me give you guys a tip. So one of the things that I've been studying a lot lately, one of the things I've studied extensively over probably the past few months, 3-4 months, is sleep. And so, my bedtime is really the latest should be about 10. So it's interesting when we start looking at genetics. We all have different, what we call clock genes. And so some people will have a delayed onset of sleep, and some people will have an early onset of sleep. So some people, you might know somebody that goes to bed at 8 p.m. and they might wake up, let's say, 5 in the morning all the time, right? And then there's other people that have delayed onset, and they might actually not go to sleep until like 12 or 11, 12, maybe even 1, and they'll tend to naturally wake up around 9 or 10. Guys, that's real. Those people aren't lazy. Those are called clock genes, okay? So I have more of a normal circadian or clock rhythm, but I should be in bed about 10. By 10. I like 9:30, tends to be better. But when I do that, I can fall asleep and I can wake up without an alarm clock every day, 6-ish, about 6, and I wake up and I feel good. But I'll tell you, like, optimizing sleep is huge. Like I've been revising the transformation program, which was actually, it's a 6-week program that we put together like clinically. We put it together clinically because I was exhausted and my staff was exhausted. Because first I would sit with people and I would go through like all these changes that I would want them to look at making, right? Dietary, lifestyle, and supplementation, and nutritional supplementation. And I would talk to someone for 2 hours and I would feel like I wanted to go lay down afterwards. And the person they'd be confused because it's 2 hours of nonstop just, talking about all these things that they need to consider doing. And by the time it was over, I was so fried, like and then it was repetitive too. You ever get like a stress response and you get hot, you like start getting frustrated and you feel heat, like your body's like, you're getting surges of cortisol and epinephrine, and you get hot and you want to take a breath and you're like, oh man, I need to move. That's how I started to feel. That's how I started feeling as I was teaching people what to do. Because we put together all these resources like diet, lifestyle changes, all these things that we wanted them to do, and we tried to put it into a guide for them that would follow over about a 6-week period. And then I was like, I can't do this. I'm gonna delegate this. So then I gave my wonderful staff the opportunity to do that. And guess what? Their brains were fried. And then people still had questions, and they would ask 1,000 questions. So I was like, what if we put this into a program? And so we put together a program, I don't know, 4 years ago maybe, not really sure. We put it into a video-based program, and then I broke all of the different sections that we would teach people into these little guides, right? Like, so here's week 1, here's week 2, here's week 3, here's what you need to do in this order. And then we started giving it to people electronically. And so that has been a wonderful resource for us and a wonderful way for people to go from like not knowing anything to being a lot, understanding the changes they need to make, the diets that we've used clinically that have worked for us, the foods that people can eat and not eat that tend to work well. It's not like it doesn't work for everyone, because everyone's a little bit different, but in general, these are the things that are going to work for a lot of people. And then diet, and then the lifestyle changes, which I've been revising a lot of that because of new things that we've learned. The lifestyle piece of it, like sleep and the stuff I've been talking about, is such a huge part. And there's new tools. I'm actually this weekend I was re-recording some of the transformation program, which is the 6-week. It's the 6-week guide 6-week program. It's guidebooks and all that good stuff. So that hopefully I'll have that done sometime soon, and I'm going to make that available to the public again. But it's not available right now. I mean, I do with people that I work with one-on-one. I still will use it because it's a great foundational tool for people to work from. Like if you don't already have a dietary approach, or there's some problems with lifestyle, a lot of times I'll have people follow that, and it tends to work really well. Like I said, not for everyone. But then if someone is, we don't use that for everyone, because sometimes that's not where they need to start. Or we have other data, like we do testing and we know more specifically what they can and can't eat, can and cannot eat, those types of things. So it can be really helpful. So, yeah. Okay, so let's do this. Let's call it a night, guys. If you have questions, post them in the comments. I'll try to get to them, or have my staff look at them too tomorrow. I'm going to be pretty busy. But please do post your questions and comments. I love to hear about your stories, even if they're struggles. Please, you can share them with us. Sometimes these comments are a bit of therapy for people too. And that's okay. That's fine. You can post them here and share with us, and we will try our best to help you out and give you some direction. Sometimes I don't know what to tell you, to be honest with you. Do the best that we can. But if there's anything that we can do for you, please do let us know. If you want to check out the guidebook, Renee, yes. If you want to check out the guidebook, I'll post that link. And then any questions, just post them in here. But I do appreciate you guys. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening, or night, I should say. It's been a good Memorial Day for us. I got to hang out with my kids and my family today. We'll be back in the office tomorrow. But I hope you all have a wonderful night and a great, great week. Talk to you again soon. Thanks.